Hi, everybody. I hope that you're having a great day. My name is Wesley O'Hara. I'm the founder and CMO of a company called HyperOrange, which is a music marketing, tech, and software as a service consultancy. I specialize in helping record labels and management companies make sure that they're building the best tech stack possible in order to be able to run the best marketing campaigns possible. I'm also an artist manager, and I work with several large Atlanta rappers. One of the ones whom I work with has had the biggest song ever on TikTok with a song called Lottery, the Renegade Dance. And yeah, I think I'm super happy to be back at Mastering the Music Business. I hope you're all having a great one so far. And let's go ahead and dive in to some ads. Now, let's just make sure that, just confirming that you can see my screen. Okay. And so today what we're going to talk about is really near and dear to my heart, and it's something that I think is very distressing to many people in the music industry, and it's how to make sense of running advertisements from a return on investment perspective. So today's session is called Adding Up Ads, Targeting and Calculating ROI in Marketing Campaigns. And we're really going to focus in on Facebook and Instagram, Spotify and YouTube, and kind of talk about what the importance of all of these different advertising platforms are in the grander scheme of the music industry. So to start with, we're going to look at some key terms and background. Then we're going to go down and go through a couple ad formats, specifically Facebook and Instagram we'll go the deepest into. Then we'll go into the Spotify Marquee, and then we're going to close out looking at something called data marketplaces, which have started emerging a lot in the music industry over the last year. And I think they're very important and good to talk about. So to start with, here are just a couple phrases that we don't tend to use in music marketing, but they're very, very important to understand. So to start, something called CAC, C-A-C, which is customer acquisition cost. The customer acquisition cost is the amount of money that we have to spend across everything in order to acquire a customer. So let's say we're doing a marketing campaign and we want to see, how many new people are generating revenue for us. And then we want to say, how much did it cost us per every single one of those new people? There are a few different ways that you can calculate CAC, and you can include all of your marketing expenses, such as, content creation, any employees, or, your own time that go into marketing. And then, of course, the actual ad spend or promotional spend itself that goes into the acquisition of these customers. So CAC is really important because at the end of the day, CAC and LTV are going to work hand in hand in order to show us when we actually break even on marketing expenses. So then LTV is customer lifetime value. At what point in time we're going to break even on a campaign is going to be really, really good to look at LTV, because if we generate, one stream off of somebody who listens to our song on the day of release, that is probably not going to be the time at which we break even on a marketing campaign. So if we're spending a lot of money to go ahead and get somebody to listen to a song on day of release, we're not necessarily going to think that we're going to break even on release day. But if we're looking at the LTV of a customer overall, that's when we can start to, have a better idea of when all of our money is coming back to us and it's actually a profitable business. And then the last thing to talk about is churn, which is the rate at which, or the time period over which customers stop generating revenue for us. So for instance, let's say I'm a fan of your music and I've been listening to you for 6 months, and one day I just suddenly stopped listening to your music. That would be the point at which I churn. If I stop generating revenue for you, that is generally what we're going to discuss as a churn rate. The evolution of the definition of a customer is going to change a little bit as things like ad revenue from Facebook and Instagram do start to roll out a little bit more. Right now, I wouldn't say that acquiring a new Instagram follower is necessarily acquiring a new customer. So there's a different metric that we use for people who are not necessarily generating revenue for us, and we would call that cost per acquisition. We're not going to discuss cost per acquisition, cost per new follower, cost per person who is not generating revenue for us today, because it's a different conversation. So before we move forward, just make sure you have in your mind, CAC is the amount of money that we have to spend on marketing to acquire somebody who generates revenue for us. LTV is the lifetime value of each of our customers, which can be assessed at a customer level or at an average across all of our customers. And then churn is the rate at which customers stop generating revenue for us. So when we're talking about key ad formats, the main things that we use in the music industry are specifically going to be Instagram and Facebook most of the time. We also use YouTube a whole lot, and Spotify is continually trying to roll out new tools to us in order to get us to spend more money with their platform. So here's a quick little overview of what $1 does across multiple different platforms. If we spend $1 on Facebook ads, then we would generally expect to get about 1,000 impressions and 5 or more link clicks. If we spend $1 on YouTube TrueView ads, then we'd expect to get 100 or more video views and 10-ish link clicks. But if we're spending $1 on a Spotify Marquee or in Spotify ads, we might just get as low as 75 impressions or 5 link clicks. So this is where all of the math starts to get messy. We could say, well, there's a tremendous value in just continually running Facebook ads, reaching tons and tons and tons of people. And you're reaching more than 10 times as many people running Facebook ads than as running Spotify ads, and you're getting the same number of link clicks. This is important to think about because when we're running ads on Facebook or Instagram, people have to click on a link on Facebook or Instagram, which will then lead them into a streaming service. And sometimes that streaming service doesn't load all the way. Sometimes, it accidentally fires the streaming service open in the browser on somebody's phone. There's a lot of factors that can go wrong here. So 5 link clicks in Facebook or Instagram isn't necessarily as valuable as 5 link clicks in Spotify. And mind you, there are different ad formats in Spotify. So if we're only talking about a Spotify Marquee, then it's actually a fixed cost of 55 cents per link click, up to a certain spend volume. So we'd actually only get 2 link clicks on a Spotify Marquee for $1. But as we are thinking about all of the different places to run ads, here's just a little bit of an overview to have in the back of your mind. So get your pencils out, start taking notes. The place that we tend to spend most of our money on advertising is in Facebook and Instagram ads, in the feed and the story. Instagram stories tend to have the highest conversion rate. The Facebook feed tends to have the lowest costs per engagement. However, even though there's a low cost per engagement, cost per click, things like that in the Facebook feed, it isn't necessarily going to be engagements or clicks that pay off all the way through. So if somebody clicks on a Facebook ad, it doesn't mean that they're going to make it all the way through to a song on Spotify and actually go ahead and listen. In fact, we're going to dive into the percentages of likelihood of that later on today. For YouTube TrueView, this is a little bit of an interesting scenario as well. With TrueView ads, you can place TrueView ads with pretty detailed targeting. You can pick specific videos that you want your ads to show on. You can pick channels or artists or overall kind of user segments of interests that you want your ads to be displayed on top of. We found that YouTube TrueView ads have been doing pretty well since a lot of people have moved to things like YouTube TV. And if people are sitting there and have a playlist of music videos on in the background, and your music video happens to come on as a TrueView ad, the whole music video is playing as an ad, then that's something which a lot of people are, sometimes okay to sit back and just listen to, as long as it's targeted correctly and you're giving them content that, is a song that is targeted to fit in with the music that that person's already listening to. It can actually add to the user's experience in that case. And one of the things that we're going to discuss is making sure that ads are a value add instead of just being, a piece of content that's promotional. And then last but not least, Spotify has Marquee and audio ads. Marquee ads have a fixed cost per click, as I mentioned earlier, and they only can be launched around the release of the song. Audio ads have variable pricing and they run in more of a programmatic level, which means if I'm targeting fans of Drake and you're targeting fans of Drake, then they're our spend is going to compete with each other, and our budgets are going to bid against each other in order to see whose ads will deliver. So to dive in a little bit to Facebook and Instagram, this is where we tend to have the most questions, and because there's the most amount of ad spend going into Facebook and Instagram, it's generally going to be the place that people want to talk about. So here we are again. So as I mentioned, it's usually the easiest place to run ads. There's a huge audience. There's a lot of retargeting ability. You can spend very efficiently and cost effectively. You can reach tons of people with ads, and you have very good reporting and deep reporting across all of these different factors. So feed ads, particularly on Facebook, are usually the cheapest. Story ads, particularly on Instagram, usually have the highest conversion rate. What that means is if somebody clicks on an Instagram story ad and they go ahead and they swipe up, then an Instagram story ad is the most likely place that they'll go through and finish the action that they clicked on an ad to do. So if we're advertising for a song on Spotify, let's say there's a 50% chance that if somebody swipes up on an Instagram story ad, they'll actually go ahead and listen to that song. But if we put an ad in the feed and somebody clicks on it, there's only about a 10% chance that somebody's actually going to go through and stream all the way. So the process that we tend to outline for advertising overall to make sure that everybody is able to do really, really effective advertising is always going to start with research. By the way, I'm sorry, I just realized that I forgot to say, if you have any questions at all, feel free to ask them, but you do have to put them in the chat on Facebook for the live feed. So everybody tuned in from Facebook, if you have questions, type away. And then we'll circle back to them with about 10 minutes at the end. So when we're advertising, starting off with research is key, because we have to define what our objectives are going to be. We have to define where conversion rates are effective for those objectives. And we also have to understand where our audience is going to be. So a lot of the process of research is going to be audience identification and understanding your audience's behavior in order to really figure out where you want to run ads. Then once your audience is figured out, you know which platforms you want to run your ads on. You know what kind of ads you're going to run. Are you going to run an Instagram story ad? Are you going to run a feed ad? How's it going to go? Then you go ahead and you actually launch them. The nice thing about Facebook and Instagram ads is you should be editing them as you see some ads doing better or other ads doing worse. Whenever I'm working in Facebook ads, something I tend to do is if I have multiple audiences created, so let's say I'm targeting people who have listened to my music in the last month, I'm targeting people who have clicked on my Facebook page in the last month and clicked on my Instagram post in the last month. And if I see one of those audiences is super expensive and not necessarily converting very well, then often I'll just go ahead and turn off that audience and let the other ad sets optimize themselves. Then this whole process just repeats and repeats and repeats. As you are running ads, it's important to do research into your own ads effectiveness and really see how are they doing, can be changed, and so on. So to really dig into audiences, if you're inside Facebook Business Manager, which you can access at business.facebook.com, this has been something that hopefully everybody's set up at this point in time. If you haven't, your first priority with Facebook and Facebook ads and Facebook management is going to be go to business.facebook.com and set up a business manager for your page. It will give you access to a whole lot more advertising capabilities than if you're only running ads from your page or through your Instagram account. So once you're inside there, there's a menu called Audiences, which lets you go ahead and look at all sorts of different ways to create audiences, sort audiences, and so on. Some of the things that I tend to do is as soon as I create a business manager for an account, I will go ahead and I'll create timed audiences based on the custom audience features that are available inside Facebook. These are things like Instagram page engagement, Facebook page engagement, pixel engagement, which means if you have a business manager set up, you've created a Facebook pixel and you've installed it on your website, you can target people or exclude people or just generally create audiences out of people who have gone to your website or clicked anywhere where you've installed your pixel. Most of the time, we're going to think of audiences as things to include and things to exclude from targeting of ads. So if we have an Instagram page and we're very active on Instagram, and you've just put a release out, you're not necessarily going to want to target people who have engaged your Instagram page in the last 7 days with ads, because if they've engaged your page in the last 7 days, there's a pretty strong likelihood they're going to be checking out what you're doing. And you don't need to spend money to go ahead and reach them. There can be tactical reasons to go ahead and spend money to reach people who are actively engaging you if you do want to serve them a different kind of experience, but that's a different thing that we usually won't consider as going to be the best way to get your return on investment. So some of the ways to think about all of these different audiences that could be created, you can shove them together in smart combinations. So let's say if you want to target everybody who's engaged your Facebook page, engaged your Instagram page, and engaged your website in the last 6 months, but exclude everybody who's engaged those things in the last 2 weeks, that's absolutely doable. So you can see in this audience, in the middle, it says custom audience, Instagram saves, Instagram post engagement, visitors, etc. And then if you look a little further down, it says excluding custom audience, Instagram post engagements, 14 days, and so on. So you're really able to nail down which people you do and don't want to have see your ads. And this is just an easy way to save money from ads right off the top of the situation. If you are trying to acquire new customers, then there's also things like lookalike audiences, which we'll discuss, and then acquiring audience through data marketplaces is possible as well. Some ways to segment users might be by creating audiences off of videos that you've created recently. So if you've posted something to your Instagram page and you only want to target people who have watched a significant portion of your video because you know that they're your super fans, that logic might work for some people. But as we said, if they've already watched a significant portion of your your video, then it's going to be important to think about, are they already going to engage you, whether or not they're seeing an ad? So creating exclusionary audiences out of video is important as well, to think, hey, if they've watched 75% of my video that's a minute long, they're probably already checking out what I'm doing. Maybe I don't need to serve them an ad. But if you have a specific reason for thinking those people are worth running ads to, make sure you weigh it out, assess the value, and go for it. Then inside the Facebook ad platform, there's just some more basic targeting aspects which you can do related to finding people who are interested in bands that are similar to yours. You can create narrowing filters. So here, in order for somebody to see the ads being shown by this audience segment, they would have to be a fan of Halsey, Paramore, or Paris, and they must also match at least one of the following against the current or all-time low. So somebody has to like one group from a bucket up top and one group from the bucket below. The way you can do this is when you're setting up your ads, you hit the narrow audience button in the audience segmentation. You can keep going further and further if you want, and go ahead and make sure that people are fans of Apple Music or Spotify on Facebook or things like that. It's neither here nor there. At this point, pretty much anybody who's a music fan is going to be fans of one of these things, unless we're running ads in a far-flung country that doesn't have Apple Music or Spotify. So other things to think about with location, you really want to be specific around how you're defining audience locations inside Facebook, because if you choose a whole bunch of locations, Facebook is going to spend evenly per person across all of those locations. So if you have Germany and Romania and Sweden all chosen, then Facebook is going to set a percentage of ad spend to go to each of those different territories based on the population. So there's a far larger population of Germany than there is Romania. And then that means a whole lot more of your ad budget would be spent in Germany. So instead of putting all of these countries into one ad set, you might want to break them out into multiple ad sets and allocate specific budgets for all of them. This is also good to do generally because if we are targeting a specific country, then we should be doing a little bit of research into the radio stations, fans of the radio stations, local venues where your bands might be playing, things like that, in order to add them as additional qualifying, narrowing targeting for your ad sets. So if you just really want to reach a whole bunch of people for super, super cheap and have an insanely low conversion rate, then worldwide targeting might work. But most of the time, you really do want to pick things at a country level and do your research into, what are, radio DSPs that are available there, uh, venues that have a high affinity for bands like your own, and so on and so forth. So when we are thinking about how to grow audiences from one platform to another, or how to make sure that we're reaching audiences in new places, it's sometimes effective to say, hey, let's go ahead and run an ad to our Instagram audience on Facebook because it will be cheaper to reach them there. So here's the logic behind that. We've established that it's cheapest to run ads in the Facebook feed. However, your Instagram audience might be more important to you than your Facebook audience. So the strategy that some people employ, and this tends to work effectively, is say, let's create an audience within Facebook Business Manager of all of the people who have engaged our Instagram page in the last year. Let's exclude everybody who's engaged our Instagram page in the last 2 weeks. So, okay, we're targeting everyone who's engaged our page from 52 weeks ago until 2 weeks ago. It's a big whack of people, but we're eliminating the ones who are highly engaged with our page already. And then let's go ahead and only run ads to those people on Facebook because it's far cheaper to run ads to them on Facebook than it is on Instagram. That's something that can definitely work. It can also help move an audience over to an additional platform. We're not super interested in organic reach on Facebook anymore. It seems Instagram is definitely the winner of organic reach at this point. But if you'd like to try to have paid reach for Instagram users via Facebook, there are still 2 billion users of Facebook and just as many users on Instagram, and they're using both platforms almost every day. So last but not least, if you are trying to grow your audience and acquire new listeners or acquire new fans who haven't yet engaged with you and they are not in any of your audiences, then lookalike audiences can work sometimes effectively. They work different than first party audiences. And what we mean is a first party audience is one of those audiences that you've created out of your own data, out of data that you control. So people who have engaged your Instagram page, people who have engaged with your Facebook pixel, people who have clicked on links where you have your pixel installed. Things like that are all first party data. Lookalike audiences are not first party data. They're created out of some crazy algorithm that Facebook's invented in order to try to find people who are similar to the members of the audience that you have from first party data. Instead of creating lookalike audiences, you should also consider whether it's effective to buy access to first party data. And we're going to talk about that at the end of the session, discussing data marketplaces and DMPs. So here is just a huge spreadsheet, which is probably a little bit overwhelming, of ads that I've been running recently for some of the artists with whom I work. I just wanted you to be able to get eyes on how a business manager can look as far as reporting goes. I'll just point out a couple things across this. At the far right, you can see the countries that are targeted. It's the US, Norway, Canada, and a few other very high streaming markets that I've chosen. The next column over is the click-through rates. If you look through, you can see it's usually around 2%. The very bottom row shows you the summary of everything, and it shows there's a 1.96% average click-through rate. But you can also see there are some places where there's a 4% click-through rate and a 4.7% click-through rate, things like that. This means that out of all of the people who are seeing ads, an average of 4 out of 100 are clicking on them. That's how it goes. Then the next column over is going to be the cost per click. This is not the cost per link click. which is a couple sections over. If you look up at the top, it says cost per unique outbound. That is the amount that you're spending per link click out of Facebook or out of Instagram and into another platform. Outbound link clicks are going to cost more than link clicks which still keep you inside Facebook or keep you inside Instagram. So there's a strategy which we'll discuss tomorrow, which is running ads to another part of Instagram. So let's say you have an Instagram story highlight in your profile, and it's like a great preview of a song. It's awesome. It has some swipe up links in it, things like that. You can run Instagram story ads to that Instagram story highlight, and instead of paying the cost per unique outbound, you can actually just pay a cost per click, which is far more cost effective. You can see here, that's the difference of 3 cents versus 11 cents per click. So that's something we'll discuss tomorrow. I hope you tune in for that one. It's gonna be really exciting. Otherwise, you can see the number of impressions that have been received. There's been over 3 million impressions across these ads with an average of 64 cents per impression. I think if you have questions on this, feel free to drop them in the chat. But if we wanna look at how effective this actually is, let's say I pulled out 1,400 click-throughs on LinkFire links of the ads that I was running in order to take a look at those. So we have, just in case it hasn't been covered yet in this conference or you're not familiar, a LinkFire link is when you take, a link or a smart link, a smart URL, Feature FM, they're all very, very comparable services. And you create a link and it can lead to multiple streaming services based on what people you have on their phones. So LinkFire specifically has a data integration with Apple Music where they can show you the number of streams that you get after people click on your links. So we can see here, we got 470 clicks on a LinkFire link that went into Apple Music. And then if we look at the bottom right, we can see that we got 1,010 streams directly from those link clicks on our music. And that's, that's fine. That's basically saying that we're getting 2.5 streams per person who's clicking on our links. So this is a feature that exists for a couple streaming services. Apple Music is the biggest one that has it involved, but it's a super useful tool. LinkFire is the only one that has access to it with this kind of click to stream data, which is a huge reason for why I use LinkFire. Going to move right along into the Spotify Marquee. I wanted to really show everybody how a Spotify Marquee works in case you haven't yet had the opportunity to look at one. A Spotify Marquee is something that pops up whenever you open the Spotify app on mobile, and it shows you what's happened. Sorry, it shows users a new release that's come out. So the targeting for marquees is very, very, very limited right now. We do expect Spotify to roll it out to a different level of targeting that is more closely aligned with the ad platform targeting. So you can choose specific artists, exclude people who have listened to your music already. But right now, the only targeting that most people can do for a marquee is going to be target people who have listened to you in the last month, target people who have listened to you in the last 3 months, or target people who have listened to you in 6 months plus, but have not listened to you in the last 6 months. So those are called lapsed listeners. There's just a couple of things to think about when we're running a marquee campaign. Marquee campaigns have a fixed cost associated with them. They have a fixed 55 cents per link click cost, which means that as soon as somebody clicks on this link, we know exactly how much we're going to be spending on them. We also have general standards and benchmarks for how many, what click-through rate people are going to have in different genres. So let's say in the genre of hip hop, there's an average click-through rate of 20%. So if 100 people see a marquee, 20 of them are going to click. This can be useful when we have a fixed cost in an advertisement, because when we chose to run this marquee ad to people who have lapsed and have not listened to us in the last 6 months, that means we're actually targeting people who are less likely to click on us, but there's still a huge group of people who are going to click on us. And overall, what this means is we have a higher likelihood to get a smaller CPM to reach more and more and more people with our budget and get the same number of clicks that we're guaranteed to get anyway. You know, no matter how you target your marquee, you're going to get the same exact number of clicks on the campaign because it's fixed clicks for the fixed cost per click with the campaign. So if you want to reach more people, you just have to optimize for trying to find an audience who is less likely to click. So in this campaign, let's say we had a $10,000 marketing budget. And then here are the immediate results that got used up in just 2 days on the campaign. So we got 18,000 clicks through to the album, 137,000 people saw the marquee, and there was a click-through rate of 13%. So what does this actually mean at a per listener rate? We had an average of 9 streams per listener after they went ahead and clicked on the marquee. That's cool. That means we're making, let's say, 5 cents back on every listener who clicks the marquee. However, we have a conversion rate of 6.4%. So out of these, 20,000 people who clicked on our ad, we had the conversion rate of 6.4% and a streaming rate of 9 streams per listener. What this all means together is we have about 80,000 streams generated in 2 weeks from $10,000 of ad spend. That math doesn't quite sound like it adds up, does it? So the important things to consider around marquees is how this plays out over time. Because if we've just gone and gotten, about 100,000 extra people who have seen our artist, and we have 20,000 extra people who have started listening to our artist, then, sorry, this is just a more audience breakdown of how marquees are presented to you. But if we have 20,000 more people who have listened to our artist and we spent $10,000, then we have to figure out, okay, at what point are we going to generate 50 cents per new listener? And this is actually fairly simple to understand and math out, as long as you're going to look further out than just the 2-week window in which a marquee is usually running. So around this campaign, you can see that on the top left graph, we had 614,000 monthly listeners total. On one day, we had 79,000 listeners. But if we look down on the other graph, on that same day where we had 79,000 listeners, we had 260,000 streams. This basically means we're getting 4 streams per listener on that day. And the 4 streams per listener rate is fairly consistent across the rest of our music, across our overall catalog. So we do know that if we have a larger catalog for artists, then the the streams per listener rate tends to go up. We also know that if we're getting our music into things like algorithmic playlists, then our streams per listener is additionally going to keep going up. And the basic math has to be, whenever we get 100 streams from a new user, from the average of the users across our marquee, then we're going to break even on the campaign, which is insane to think about when we just say, okay, we just spent $10,000, got 80,000 listens immediately. But if we keep looking at how that audience interacts over time, as long as we're understanding their lifetime value and trying to understand when they're going to churn, and we have a good understanding of how long they're going to stick around, then all of this math can kind of make sense. So I'm not saying go ahead and run marquee ads right now. I would say if you are, really have a huge budget and you have a giant catalog, then a marquee is something that can break even for you in probably 4 to 6 months. Other than that, it's really important to still, test out things like Spotify ads themselves, because acquiring listeners in the freemium tier or running ads in Spotify toward audiences that are listening to artists whose radio you want to appear on is another good tactic where you can acquire a bunch of listeners who are just going to generate you revenue in the background. Last thing to discuss, we have 5 minutes left until I'm going to open it up to questions. there's something out there called data marketplaces, which are basically where you can sell and buy data. It sounds a little bit scary, but it's not all that scary, and it's actually really good for the internet. So let's say you are a band that's just like Coldplay, and you want to advertise to Coldplay's actual audience. You can go ahead into a data marketplace and pay to be able to buy advertising access to Coldplay's audience directly. What this means is if you're trying to target, let's say, 2,000 people, you would buy audience access at a CPM of 2. So that means for every 1,000 people that you are buying audience access to, you're paying $2. Now, the math for this basically goes, you want to narrow your audience down, like laser focused, instead of just going ahead and saying, this is, I want to buy all of Coldplay's audience, which would cost you tens and tens of thousands of dollars. You could instead say, I want to buy the audience of Coldplay that clicked through a smart link into Spotify in the last 90 days. And let's say there's 5,000 people who have done that in the last 90 days. That would cost you $10. That's not scary. Then you do have to run ads to those people afterwards. But the other important thing of DMPs, data marketplaces, is that you can use them yourself. So you can put your data into data marketplaces, and DMPs are structured to continually package data in new ways to make sure that they're selling as much of it as possible. So if you're an indie artist, then let's say you're putting your data into a data marketplace and your audience is getting bigger and bigger and bigger because you've specifically been running ads, then you can actually get a additional type of return on your ad investment from the data marketplace selling your data to other things. This is highly conceptual, so I'm just going to hop out really quickly and show you a data marketplace, the main one that's used in the music industry, which is a company called Autogen. So sharing my screen from share. So if we open up Autogen, basically, once you're inside the platform, you can go ahead and you can say, all right, who do we want to target? We want to, only be looking at people who use specific platforms or IDs that came from specific platforms. We want to be able to look at, the different things that people like. And by the way, we can layer all of the different things that we want. So we can say pop fans who are TV lovers and, fashionistas. And when we do this, we can also go ahead and automatically see down here a couple of audiences that this platform has banked, which are highly like the audiences that we've been describing. I just chose a super generic audience, so I'm going to actually clear that out. But if we want to dive into, a more specific audience that we could buy access to, we could actually look for specific individual artists, mostly ones from major record labels like WMG. But I've just typed in Charlie XCX. We can go ahead and we can look at the audience of hers that is banked inside Autogen, and we can see, all right, here's, as it's loading, here's the total number of IDs that have been banked. Here are the different places they've come from. So if we want to target website visitors for Charlie XCX, there's 110,000 of them in the time horizon that we're looking at, and that would cost us, $200 to go ahead and buy access to. It also shows us some other artists that are very similar. It shows us countries where this audience is broken down. We can also look at the actual, LinkFire links and smart links that have been posted by this artist, the total number of clicks that they got, the number of duplicated or bot clicks that they got, and then the number of actual clicks that they got. And we could buy access to, I want to buy access to, people who clicked on this specific link by Charlie XCX. If we wanted to get super specific in our targeting. This is a good thing to think about because as you do buy audiences and advertise for those audiences, your audience is going to become more similar to the audiences that you're buying, and thus it's going to be bundled in to some of these larger packages. So if you don't necessarily care about a specific artist whose audience you want to buy, and you just want to go ahead and see what's a whole list of smart link clickers in the last 30 days on indie musicians or rock musicians or pop musicians, then your data can be put into those segments and sold, and you get a percentage of sale as well. So the bigger your audience gets from advertising, the more money you can make from selling your audience. It's like a separate kind of ROI that you can get out of the whole advertising ecosystem. Now, I think that's basically all that I have in my presentation. If you'd like a little bit more information from me, feel free to get in touch. There is, a few slides at the end that we didn't get to go through. But let's open it up now to questions. And by the way, if you would like to get in contact with me directly, my email is w@hyper-orange.com. And that's w@hyper-orange.com. And let's go ahead and dive into questions. So, question number one, in the case of an independent artist with limited budget, what kind of ad campaigns would you recommend? So the main kind of ad campaigns that I would recommend would first be YouTube TrueView ads. We didn't talk about them much, but they're very straightforward. You can just go ahead and set up a music video, and as long as its lyrics aren't too explicit, and as long as it's not too violent or sexualized or anything like that, then you can pretty much run this ad anywhere on the YouTube ecosystem. So you can pick specific videos that you want to place this ad on, and it will actually be able to run on those videos and only on those videos. The other place that I'd say to go ahead and run ads is going to be in Instagram stories. And there's a specific format to run ads in called the Instagram story carousel. This lets you go ahead and take up to 10 videos and put them in an ad together in a story. So if you think of in the Instagram feed, how you can swipe through a post that has multiple images on it, it's the same kind of way with an Instagram carousel ad. You can put up to 10 videos or images into a story, and that means if you have 10 videos in a story carousel ad, people have to tap their phone through that ad 10 times in order to get all the way through it, or they just do the full swipe pull in order to get it off the screen. I think you know what I'm talking about. But when we are running Instagram story carousel ads, the entire screen is covered by the ad. So you have an opportunity to make a really nice, beautiful first impression on somebody. You have the opportunity for them to hear your music. And then you can, the best way that I'm going to say to run those ads is going to be to put swipe up links to an Instagram story highlight, which is actually going to lead the ad clicker to your profile, but it's only going to charge you for an in-platform click instead of an outbound platform click. So if you remember how we were looking at Business Manager impacts earlier, an in-platform click might cost you 3 pennies and an outbound click might cost you 10. So you can get 3 times the amount of traffic to a specific part of your profile. And there's a specific way that I recommend you set up Instagram story highlights as well, to make sure that it has multiple swipe ups across it, that it has multiple behind the scenes elements behind it. There's a lot to be done around there. I think if we have any other questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat now on Facebook. And a couple other questions that we tend to get are, how do we actually measure lifetime value? And I think this is going to vary from artist to artist, but you can look inside your Spotify for artists, look inside your Apple Music for artists. And one of the good things to check out is, how does your audience change over time from a size perspective, but also how many streams are you getting per listener at an audience level. So we'll find that pop artists or background music will have higher streams. Like lo-fi beats will have somewhere between 12 and 20 streams per listener in maybe a month. And then for pop artists, it might be between 7 and 10 pretty typically. For something like hip hop, it might be down further around 5. but it all depends on the audience. It all depends on the song and the artist and everything like that. So I'm told that that's all the questions that we have so far. Again, if you'd like to get in touch with me, my email address is w@hyper-orange.com. And I hope you can tune in for tomorrow's session, because it's going to be a really good one where we're going to discuss how to make the best content for cheap, how to make the most content, and how to make sure that our ads are actually adding a whole lot of value when we're running them, and choosing the platforms and the targeting and all of that stuff to run them with. So have a great day, everyone.